811 star 816 hash star 811 star 816 hash.
This is the great KBC, and this is KBC News Check, a program that ensures that we keep you afloat on all the latest happening in the country. Today being the 17th day of January 2023, and today is a very monumental day. I say this because today is when the tenure of two chairpersons of two independent commissions that are enshrined in the Constitution and are mandated in the Constitution to help actualize two things: fight corruption and carry out matters electoral. I'm talking about the IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati and two other commissioners. What does that leave us, or where does that leave us as a commission, is that we have only one commissioner who happens to be facing a tribunal, that is Irene Masit. Are we staring at a constitutional crisis? The reason I'm asking this question is because according to the law, 6 months to the end of the tenure of a chairman or a commissioner of the IEBC, the president should have already started the process of ensuring there is a select panel that will carry out the whole recruitment exercise. But there is still hope, because on Thursday, the Senate will be having a special sitting where we'll be debating the IEBC bill, just to put things into perspective, and a framework to ensure now that we'll be having a new commission with new commissioners. Some have argued that we should first of all wait for the tribunal. We see whether the IEBC Commissioner Irene Masit will be ejected out of office, so that we may have a clean and lean IEBC that will be free, fair and independent to carry out the electoral mandate. That is part of the discussion that we will be having, and especially now that yesterday the IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati did start us up with the latest report on how the 2022 election were carried out. A number of issues emerged, including matter security, because once in the Kenyan politics, matters electoral are quite emotive. That is will be forming part of our discussion today. Remember, we are live from the broadcasting house here in the county of Nairobi, and we are also live on all our social media outlets. For comments, suggestions, or even where you are watching us from, we highly recommend you do that. At Bentro Njue, at KBC Channel 1 is my and our KBC Twitter handle. Away from that, the politics of the day, the president did have quite a busy weekend where he spent a couple of days in the Nyanza region, where has been interpreted both as a development tour and also politics always have to chip in. Where are we as a country? The state of politics is what we'll be discussing this morning, and my sign language interpreter colleague on the bottom right of your screen is Byron Abuli. And right in what we are looking at, we are also looking at a number of issues. I mentioned about two chairpersons who their tenure happens to end today. The other one happens to be the EACC, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission chair, retired Archbishop Eliud Wabukala. The 6-year tenure also ends today. And yesterday also, EACC did come up with a report of how the year was, and especially when it comes to matters fighting corruption. Talking about over 900 billion that has been able to be recouped that was proceeds of crime. That is also something that we'll be touching about. And allow me now to introduce my panelists this morning. On my immediate left, we have the MP Isiolo County, or if you like, the women rep for Isiolo County, Honorable Mumina Bonaya. Karibu sana. You are elected on a Jubilee party ticket. Yeah. And just next to her, we have Dr. Harun Isaac Harun, who is a political analyst and also leadership and governance expert. Ladies and gentlemen, karibuni.
Thank you, Njue.
And to begin with you, Mheshimiwa, kindly, we are just slightly over 100 days since the Kenya Kwanza government took over office. What can you say in terms of how they have carried themselves before we look at the electoral matters?
Thank you, Njio, for this opportunity. I think 100 days is the number of days we are looking at to be able to gauge how the government has fared on. And for some of us who are elected, we probably will want to check that against the people we represent. And where I come from, the two burning issues or the major challenges that the people in North are facing. One is security, and second is the drought. And I will want to speak how the government has performed in those two areas. On matter security, I really want to commend the government for the good job that they are doing. And I will not shy away to say that there's much improvement in security sector. As you know, North has been troubled for a very long time. And I like the way the government is hands-on in terms of within the 100 days that they've been in office to address issues, systemic issues that has been there for a very long time that has never gotten attention in terms of ensuring that level of surveillance is increased. The response is timely, and I really want to thank Professor Kindiki for the job that he's doing. So in the sector, security sector, we are hopeful and we are happy. And I'm saying this on behalf of the people I represent.
Yeah, okay. Yes, and it's a good thing because the two of you are two leaders from the northern frontier, and security is one of the issues that we were supposed to touch on a little bit later, but we can clear it out right now and say that the Rio region has been worst affected by the drought, and there have been mitigation efforts by the government and other stakeholders. Where can you rank the Kenya Kwanza government in regards to the drought? More specifically, when you talk about the northern frontier counties?
I want to be very objective. You've heard me say good things about response when it comes to security.
Yes.
So far, we are happy. But when it comes to drought, I'm a little bit disappointed. What I expected to see is, synergy between national and county government in responding to the situation on the ground. We're having a very difficult moment, where we are losing the herd, and it's now gotten to a point where we are even losing human lives. So the bigger the problem, my expectation was the robust the response. I have not seen that. Unfortunately, I have not seen that, and I'm hopeful that we will see that in the coming days.
And we will be touching on that a little bit later as well. And Doc, I also like to reel you in with these two factors that Mheshimiwa has mentioned here in terms of security. We are just slightly over 100 days since the Kenya Kwanza government took office, and also being a leader, she has mentioned that in terms of the security matters, the work that is being done will quite bear fruit. So though not right now, or even right now, but they will bear fruit. But when it comes to the drought response in the northern frontier, she is a little bit cagey on how the government has carried itself and would want more intervention. I would like you to touch on those.
Right, thank you very much, Njue. Thanks, Mheshimiwa, for being in the same platform. I would like to bring the issue of security later and bring up the issue of drought first, because security, the main factor in our region's security is basically because of resources. Resources has become a big issue. Having had drought for almost 6-7 seasons that have not fully realized means the productivity of pasture, the productivity of food within the area has become minimal. You know very well, quite a number of people have lost their animals in that region. And the fact that there is quite a number of raids in most part of the country where people think that they are cattle rustling, or people think that they are banditry, much of it is resources. And that comes to now the point of Mheshimiwa saying that issues of drought has not been addressed very well. In terms of the catchment area, malnutrition cases are very high. People are now trying to survive on a single meal, or in some cases with no meal a day. Children have nowhere to rush to, so people are embarked on IDPs because animals have already perished, all of them. And you know, the desert cruiser, the camel, when you see a camel dies because of drought, then you know the cows and the goats and other livestock will not exist completely. That means they have been all wiped out. In terms of the response, we know there are significant response that have been initiated, both at the county level and at the national level. However, the methodology and the approach that is being used and how the targets are being, you know, it's called blanket targeting, because everybody is affected. So when you get to blanket targeting, you need to provide at least food for each and every person, water for each and every person, and of course to salvage the little camels that have remained by providing fodders. So that is not realized. There are quite a number of issues being talked about in terms of response, but on the ground you see people are still crying. People are still hungry, and you see people have all become IDPs in main towns. And now the number of beggars in the centers along ASAL areas have drastically increased. So we have quite a number of people who have never begged anything in their life and now are begging for their survival daily meal. So I think it is the responsibility of Mheshimiwa who are representing our people in parliament, and of course the government that is currently pushing the agenda, so that they, you know, they come together and find out the best way in which they can salvage the little that have remained in terms of livestock, as well as saving the life of people and reduce the effect of the drought.
Yeah, and of course the government and other stakeholders, especially in the northern frontier, are quite ardent in what they are doing to try and alleviate the problem. Now back to matters electoral. Yesterday, Wafula Chebukati, more or less in his last presiding function, he gave an account of the 2022 election. Election in Kenya is just like the former National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi said, in Kenya it's more or less a matter of life and death. And from what Chebukati said yesterday, indeed it is a matter of life and death. Talking about intimidation, talking about they won't risk allowance, they had to switch off their phone, they had to hide after the August 15 day. And there's one key thing that Chebukati pointed out, and which lies squarely at Parliament. They said that we've had issues on funding, and that is why we are not always able to prepare for election the way that we should, or the way that is enshrined in the Constitution. Talking about Parliament being lax in matters passing electoral laws, and also in terms of releasing money meant for election. I'd like you to comment on that. You sit at the National Assembly.
Thank you. I think when it comes to matters election and how we run it in this country, we've always had a problem. Every 5-year term, when we go to election, we get back with so much, controversy, blame game, who did what, who didn't do what, election being stolen, and all that. But I think if you look at other countries where the election is, run in a smooth scale with no casualties and everything, you tend to wonder, why is it so difficult for us to get to that level? And when the chair says part of the reason is resources, I think talking of resources is limited everywhere. It's not just when it comes to election. Right now we are talking about a drought where people are dying, herd is swept out, but because resources are very little, the response is not felt. The impact is not, being felt on the ground. Same applies to election. If we want to have, election that is clean and seamless, then we should also be ready to invest in it in terms of financing. And you can't squarely blame Parliament for the resources that are not coming forth, because the competing interests are many. Right now we are talking of, education, rolling out KBC, which is costly. We are talking of investing in security. We are the basics. We are still at the basics. So by the time we get to, resourcing election to the level where we are comfortable and it can be...
My point of coming into this point is that we are looking at elections that we have 5 years to prepare. Not like education or the drought that is more or less like a process. But when it comes to the election, at least we have 5 years. Right now we know very well that we are preparing for our next general election in 2027. We have enough time.
First of all, if you get to look at the budgeting that normally is given in terms of how much it will cost to run an election, and compared to other countries, for our case it's always huge. The amount is so much that as a country we can't even afford to the level where we can say things can go on smoothly. So first of all, we need to interrogate, why is it so costly for Kenya to run an election? Because with that in mind, then we are able to objectively interrogate why we are spending so much, or why we need to spend so much on election. And over time, then within the 5 years, we also need to be preparing on some of the, areas. We should not wait until the last minute to start running around to procure kits, to do what. The last minute. It is even costly to do things last minute. So there are a number of things that probably need to be looked into, even in terms of how we spend those resources, the little resources that we get. How else can we leverage on ICT to ensure that our elections are not that expensive? Because there are countries where people just vote from the comfort of their home. They don't have to queue all the way. We don't have to carry all these gadgets to, far-end areas and all that. So I think it is time IBC probably engages Ministry of ICT to the extent where we can secure our elections and make it cheaper as well for the country.
Yeah, and I'll still pick it from there, because Mheshimiwa has raised a very pertinent issue, is that our elections are very expensive compared to other nations. And of course, there's a trust deficit, Doc. You believe me that we wouldn't want, if we printed our own things here in a country, just like we do money and other things, it would be a little bit cheaper. But because of the trust deficit that we always have on our electoral matters, that is why we always have an issue. And there's also, she pointed out that we've always had issues all the election cycles. We started with Zacchaeus Jesoni, we know what happened, then we went to Kevuito-led commission, then we went to Isaac Hassan commission, then we went to Chebukati. And Chebukati, I would say he has weathered the storm, because this is the first cohort of commissioners who have cleared their 6-year term. We are always talking about the must go. And yesterday, Chebukati also raised a very pertinent issue. He said to the president, please probe exactly what happened in at the Bomas of Kenya on August the 15th, because more or less we were on the brink. We were just there. We were almost actually having what we've always had, issues, matters that sometimes escalates to matter security, and we also have 2007 to borrow a leaf from. I'd like you to point out on that.
Yeah, Njue, thank you very much, Mheshimiwa. I think matter of elections in Kenya is complex. I call it complex because when you are given a task to fulfill and then you are not given resources, it's like you are given a vehicle with deflated tires. You can't move it. And when you can't move it, then of course a lot of other things happens now. You know, there's a playful that comes as a result of issues that are emerge due to resources. However, you know, give credit to its due. I think Kenyans, despite shortcomings, Kenyans have set a new bar for it themselves in terms of, in matters of election.
This year?
Last year, sorry, last year, yeah. The reason being, we were able to decide on who won in an election. We were able to back on. Leaders are able to contain themselves and keep off from violence, and decide, you know, went to courts. You know, they put all their hopes on Supreme Court, and the results that have come out of that place was also embraced, and therefore we did without violence. So we raised the bar for both ourselves, our neighbors, and of course Africa at large in terms of last year's election. In terms of election processes, this is still an issue. One, nobody trusts the referees. We appoint them, but at one point, once it gets, when the, you know, when things become hot, you lose trust in them. Pressures come, and you want everyone, not him to act as a referee, but you want him to do favor for the person who is, you know, playing the game for that particular day. If everybody reasons that way, then definitely elections will not be democratic. But from the way things have started now, I think in future no Kenyans will come out in the street because a certain leader has lost his seat. Because the two things that keep people together is for us to accept democracy. We must embrace democracy. And from the onset of 2022 election results, I think slowly we are embracing democracy. I think 2027 things will be much better. In terms of costing and materials for election, I think that's a crisis. Why am I calling it crisis? We're able to produce our currency, which is a legal tendency, you know, a legal currency that we use for day-to-day things.
It is recognized.
It is recognized the whole world. What is a ballot paper? We could even use an excise book to actually use
but we have the trust deficit here in the country. We wouldn't even trust our own.
What happens after you, you know, I'm looking at not the document. I'm looking at what happens after the document is delivered. So the whole process, the document is delivered to the polling stations. In the polling stations, we all have our agents, people who look after this document. We have security agents who look after that. And therefore, what is it that you must have a special paper that needs to be utilized in a polling station by a local person whom himself cannot even tick for himself? You have to ask him, whom do you want? This one. There is no even confidentiality in the person you elect. Almost 60%. I don't like giving out figures when I'm not very certain about it as a researcher, but I mean majority of our population are people who are voter assisted. If you are voter assisted, what is it that this paper will come with as a trust? I mean, in any case, this paper will eventually end up in the ballot polling stations, given to a PO, presiding officer, and distributed to the clerks who are tasked to do the exercise, and they allow you to do the process. So any paper you use from this center, from the center, I mean the IBC HQ, to the polling station, it is only useful when it gets to the polling station, when the voter himself gets that paper and votes in. So any paper given to you, and they have pictures there and names, we are able to take and post it in. I don't think if there is complex in terms of, or trust in terms of producing papers, I think it is just our greed in terms of producing those papers.
Okay,
we want to use a lot of resources to produce a paper that we will have just used locally, produced it locally, and do our process successfully.
Okay, and today, Mheshimiwa, Chebukati and 2 other commissioners exit office, leaving Irene Masit, who is facing a tribunal. And God forbid if something happens to the top, to our top politician or our president, our deputy, there would be a constitutional crisis, as we do not have an IEBC right now. And part of the reason why we are in this quagmire is because the law itself says 6 months to the exit of the commissioner and the chairman. We are supposed to have already started the recruitment process. Right now, are we staring at a constitutional crisis?
True. I think talking of the 6 month to their expiry of their contract,
yes,
we were preparing for election. It didn't make sense to tell them, now leave, we recruit others. There is also need for, institutional memory to be carried to election time. We had new commissioners coming on board, so it didn't make sense within that 6 months to let go of these other ones who were doing the
exactly.
job.
They were supposed to finish their term, just like the second-term governors were supposed to do. But we knew very well there's another governor who is coming in. The preparations phase itself is a grey area because we even did the elections in August. Maybe the president could have started that in September, in October, in November, in December. Yet the process has not started, and Senate have had to have a special sitting.
I understand. I think we went to election still asking ourselves, should we change IBC commissioners? Should we go to the election with the same people? We were still in that debate until the election time go to where we were supposed to conduct election. So as a country, I think we were also divided on whether Chebukati and the team should be the one to lead our election or we should bring on board new team. You remember the agitation to have some change happen. There was push and pull until the election time happened. So as a country, we failed to prepare ourselves for that. And here we are in a situation where we've not fulfilled the laid out procedure in terms of, replacing those who are exiting. The ones who are supposed to carry on are in a situation where they are being investigated and we don't know what the tribunal will say about what their fate will be and all that. So I think for me, sometimes we put ourselves in this situation because of, playing too much politics. We never agree on, anything that probably will affect all of us at some point.
Okay.
It doesn't matter who is in power at that moment.
Yes, and I'll still be coming to you. Just a minute. We now have to cross over to Boma Hotel, where there's a Construction Excellence Award, where Karon Jenga is keeping a keen eye on that. But when we come back, should we wait for the one commissioner, the result of the one commissioner who is being investigated? Hold the thought. Let's first of all cross over to the Boma Hotel.
Well, thank you for joining us, Ben Troy. As you have rightly said, we are at Boma Hotel, right here in South Sea, where the Construction Excellence Awards function has just concluded, where we've been told that there's going to be awarding of contractors here in the country who have done excellent job in the last 2 years. These awards are done twice in a year, or rather once in 2 years, and we'll be knowing later on the 27th of this month who are going to emerge the winners in this Construction Excellence Awards. And just to basically know about these awards and also know about the status of the construction industry, we have Manesh, who's going to introduce himself and tell us who he is and also what he represents, and also about the Construction Excellence Awards and some of the new emerging trends right here in the construction industry. Maybe we can start by your name and maybe you share with us some of the emerging trends that are there in the construction industry.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Manish Mehra. I am the CEO of Mabati Rolling Mills. We are here to proudly co-sponsor the Construction Excellence Awards, which is being instituted for the first time. MRM has been in Kenya for over 60 years, and it has always pioneered excellence in the construction industry, and it has always partnered with the various institutions which are in the country which are promoting excellence in the construction industry. So we are very proud to be co-sponsoring the first such awards this year.
Maybe we can start about the emerging technologies that that are emerging in this industry and share with us some of these technologies.
The construction industry is an ever-evolving industry because the needs of the consumers are changing. We are committed to providing the best in class, which is to offer. Very recently, we have commissioned our latest state-of-the-art stone-coated manufacturing line in Kenya. It is in Athi River. Our brand is called Lifestyle. We have been selling this brand for some time, but this is the first time that we will be manufacturing it locally. So it will be completely made in Kenya. And along with that, we are also looking at bringing out other solutions to make construction or rather the choice easier for the consumer, to be a one-stop solution for the construction needs of the consumer, like pre-engineered buildings, cold rooms, trussing. We have those solutions as well. So we would like to be a one-stop provider for the construction industry as far as steel is concerned.
Okay. When you talk about this Construction Excellence Awards, maybe you can share with us how is it to get rid of these rogue contractors who are in the industry and spoiling for the rest of the guys who are doing excellent work in the construction industry?
Yeah. We believe that it's an emerging industry and there are regulations which they do exist, but maybe the enforcement needs to be better. And we will also engage in training these contractors through our Fundis program, and we will partner with various other institutions to take this program forward, and also look at accreditation, so that the consumer can get the confidence that the construction worker or the Fundi he or she is hiring will indeed provide the best of quality. So we as leaders of the industry will champion this cause of training the Fundis as well.
Thank you so much. As you've rightly heard, that is Manish talking about the areas they're touching on training to ensure that they get rid of some of these rogue operators that are affecting this industry. Remember, there has been cases of collapse of buildings recently, and you've seen right here in Kiambu County, where we saw 5 buildings collapse in the last couple of months. And maybe some of this training that the CEO of Mabati Rolling Mills is talking about will help in getting rid of these rogue contractors in the industry. That is it from me. Troy, back to you in studio.
Thank you, Karon Jenga, live from the Boma Hotel. There is a Construction Excellence Award that are sponsored by the National Construction Authority in conjunction with other stakeholders. They are engaging one of the partners in regards to that, and it's a good thing that she has pointed out that in the last couple of months we've witnessed a lot of collapsed buildings in the country. Well, back to our live discussion, we are talking about the state of politics in the country, and more specifically we are looking at the IEBC. Yesterday they did point out some of the loopholes that were there in the 2022 election and some of the gains that we have made over the years in matters electoral in the country. And I'm honored to be hosting Isiolo MP Mumina Bonaya and also Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan, who are political leaders and also political analyst for Isaac Hassan. And before we crossed over to the Boma Hotel, we were talking about right now we have the best opportunity to have the cleanest IEBC. We have one commissioner who's being investigated, and we expect after that tribunal has already come up with the deliberations. But let's be honest, even the government, MPs, the Kenya Kwanza MPs, they were quoted saying the honorable things these commissioners should do before even they resign should be to resign. But Irene Masit has held her ground, and she said that she will go through the tribunal, that she wants to be vindicated. But this time round, after we have botched IEBC commissions previously, is this the best time that we can have the best IEBC that will be face of the country, that will be free, will be credible, more than what we've had in our previous years, so that we may get election matters a little bit not more serious than they look?
Thank you. I'll start with the previous discussion, which we left slightly hanging. That is, are we likely to face
the constitutional
crisis? And is there any fault in terms of the process. Why did we fail to have this in place, these preparations in place before time? You know very well, Kenyans traditionally, they are known for last-minute rush. That has been also replicated in our parliamentarians. You know, there are quite a number of constitutional forms, acts or laws that are being passed the last day when they think that tomorrow will be crisis, special sittings, and they burn their midnight energy. This has been a tradition, and I think one way or another it is good to say in any process when we fail, because we are human, I think it is good to say we failed our part and we couldn't do it in the right time. Having said that, the legal team will tell us differently, but I think if as Chebukati and his team are exiting today, I don't think if they will leave the office vacant until we have another commissions in place.
Yes.
That happens everywhere. I saw from some legal team saying that they can be in the office, but their mandates are
more or less like
restricted.
a secretariat.
Exactly.
Yes.
We pray that nothing happens as they remain secretariat until we have the clean team.
Yeah, because it's going to take a
while. It will take at least 3 months, 4 months or so.
Even more.
And if we take it very fast, such crisis will occur because, you know, when you don't give a second thought in terms of whom you appoint to certain offices, then crisis like this comes. You remember last time we discussed about the commissioners and we said, so long as you have signed against an oath, you cannot go against that oath. That happens only when you don't understand what you are doing. So in terms of the new commissioner, the only commissioner now currently battling, I think it's an individual decision, and an individual who knows probably everything what has transpired well, and probably played little or minimal role and just flocked with the rest, decides to face a tribunal. So it is good for her to be in the tribunal because we want to know exactly what has transpired, and I'm sure she will open up to salvage herself. But in terms of constitutional crisis, is something that we just pray that doesn't happen, but we are already in it. And we hope that our president, who is very wise in bringing things very fast, bring the selection panel on board with his parliamentarians who are supposed to be part of the process. And then we have the commissioners. I know there are quite a number of independent bodies that have, their chairs have expired and their commissioners have finished their terms. And all that will going to bring a big issue. But the main one that is likely to cause crisis is the IBC one. And to avoid, in future, I'll only say one thing. Let's forget about our pride. Let's forget about politicking. Let's strengthen institutions and make sure that institutions operate within their mandate and given the necessary support.
Yes, and I don't know whether my director Mugo Kariuki can bring in the clip. That clip is ready in regards to Chebukati. Remember also EACC chairperson term also ends today. Is that clip ready? As we wait for that clip, all right, let's first of all have that clip to just have a feel of what Chebukati had to go through. And I would say it has been a lot of rainy days for Chebukati, but he has held firm. Let's have a look.
The law are followed.
61-year-old Wafula Chebukati, the man who has overseen all the elections since 2017, having come in on January 18, 2017, courtesy of President Uhuru Kenyatta's appointment. The intrigues that surrounded the resignation of the previous electoral team would certainly make Chebukati not anticipate his new role at the helm of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to be a walk in the park.
We are coming in office when the exercise is going on, voter registration is going on. So we are going to hit the ground running to ensure that all processes and systems involved are in place. Of course, our long-term goal is to ensure IEBC has proper systems in place and processes so that not every year come in, come out election year, we have to redo these things.
If 2022 general elections is anything to go by, he had not anticipated it was to be this rough either. He was appointed alongside 6 other commissioners, namely Vice Chair Consolata Nkatha, Roslyn Akombe, Paul Kibiwot Kurgat, Abdi Gulie, Margaret Mochana, and Boya Molu.
I, Dr. Paul Kibiwot Kurgat.
I, Boya Molu. I, Professor Abdi Gulie.
I, Kwamboka Roslyn Akombe, Doctor.
I, Margaret Wanjala Mwachanya.
I, Consolata Nkatha Butcher Minor.
The resilience developed during a 36-year career in litigation and dispute resolution would be tested 7 months after his appointment as his commission oversaw the 2017 general election.
To our brothers who were worthy competitors, we are not enemies. We are all citizens of one republic.
With Uhuru Kenyatta getting elected for a second term as president, the opposition, led by Raila Odinga, would successfully petition the Supreme Court to nullify the result, and a repeat election was sanctioned.
So using some fake ID cards to register people as voters, like we demonstrated.
Despite weeks of protest by the Odinga-led National Super Alliance Coalition and calls to overhaul IEBC, Chebukati did not give in. However, Commissioner Roslyn Akombe could not sustain the pressure, quitting before the repeat polls, claiming that some commissioners were partisan and the commission could not deliver a credible election. Although Chebukati reinforced Akombe's claims, adding that commissioners had voted down his intended reforms based on political affiliations, he would oversee the repeat presidential election in which Uhuru Kenyatta was re-elected after Raila Odinga refused to contest. The commission had weathered the storm, or so it thought. In April 2018, the commission was once again making the headlines after the chair, Wafula Chebukati, suspended CEO Ezra Chiloba over what he termed as gross misconduct at the commission, a suspension that would eventually lead to Chiloba getting fired.
I'm told they're not, so that's fine. I cannot force myself in.
The development would see more changes at the commission as 3 commissioners, namely Vice Chair Consolata Nkatha, Paul Kurgat, and Margaret Mochana, resigned. This would leave the commission with a lack of quorum. In 2021, at a time when political campaign mood ahead of the 2022 general election was picking up, Chebukati and IEBC would get a boost as President Kenyatta nominated and appointed 4 new commissioners, Juliana Cherera, Francis Mathenge Wanderi, Irene Masit, and Justus Abonyo, after they were cleared by the National Assembly. This move was aimed at helping the commission attain quorum while making major decisions as well as restoring its integrity. Fast forward to August 2022 as Kenyans headed to the polls to elect new leaders.
Kenya will hold its 12th general election since independence and its 7th since the introduction of multi-party democracy in 1992. And this will be the 3rd general election to be held under the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Kenya is also on the verge of transition of power through an election for its 5th president. This momentous occasion will be in the hands of 22,120,458 registered voters.
To Chebukati's relief, the voting process was quite smooth, or so it appeared, with few cases of malpractices being reported across the country. With voting closed and winners of various elective posts announced, the ball was now in IEBC's court as the citizenry waited anxiously to know who would be announced the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya. And waiting they did. After 6 days of vote tallying, with constant updates on the progress being made by Chebukati, the D-Day came. Monday 15th August kicked off filled with anxiety as supporters of both camps awaited Chebukati's big announcement. The national returning officer, as per communique to the media, was to name the presidential winner at 3 p.m. A 2-hour delay would see chaos erupt at the National Tallying Center, the Bomas of Kenya, as agents and politicians allied to opposing camps clashed. After calm was restored, Chebukati would announce William Ruto as the president-elect.
Ruto William Samoei has been duly elected as the president.
Ruto praised Chebukati, terming him the country's hero. The Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party presidential candidate Raila Odinga rejected the results and accused Chebukati of bungling the election.
Avoidance of doubt, I want to repeat that we totally and without reservations reject the presidential results announced yesterday by Mr. Chebukati.
A hero or a villain? The big question, as Chebukati marked his last general election ahead of his retirement. For Prime
You asked me about...
That has been a comprehensive journey of where the IEBC chair who exits office today, Wafula Chebukati, started, and now it's time for him to bid goodbye after his 6-year term together with 2 other commissioners, and that has formed the basis of our discussion today. I'm the Isiolo MP, and I also have a governance expert, and to delve right into what we have been able to see. Yesterday, Chebukati talked about the operationalization of the IEBC fund, so that they may be able, more or less like the judiciary, or more or less like how the police were given some autonomy in regards to finances. Could that help salvage the situation? Because looking at the BBI, one of the major issues was that the commissioners, there were arguments that the commissioners were not enough to actually carry out the process, and that is something that was challenged in court. Do you think the operationalization of the IEBC fund could help? And this is where Parliament comes in.
Thank you. I think I want to make reference to what my friend said here about for us getting to learn how to build strong institutions, both at national and local level. I think our biggest challenge as a country has been if we look at an institution and it's not serving our interests, then we destroy it. It doesn't matter how strong it is, it doesn't matter how independent it is, as long as we realize at that point in time it's not serving our interests, then we do everything to unsettle it. And I don't know whether it's by default or by design that we always have these, linked to financial independence of an institution. If an institution is an independent institution, then everything should be independent.
Including finances.
Exactly. That's where I'm coming to. So this idea of, IBC always begging the government of the day, Parliament for, resources and all that, is actually one of the greatest undoing that we must address. If we truly want to have institutions that will stand time and institutions that will be free of, our interests and our politics of the day and all that. So, like you said, this could be an opportunity to do all that, to right the wrongs that has been there before. Because until and unless we let institutions grow, until and unless we invest in institutions to serve, the larger interests of a nation, then we will always be talking about IBC that is not able to conduct election. We'll not always be talking about controversy after every election. It's by good luck that last election we didn't go to kill each other. And maybe it's because we're also getting wary as
Kenyans, yeah.
Kenyans. Because it's very costly to always be on the street fighting and all that. But to put this matter to a stop, because it is for the benefit of everybody. As a member of Parliament, I'll be so concerned, and I'll put my energy where we will be able to build not just IEBC, strong institutions that will serve interests of everybody, including EACC, including the police, including all these institutions. So if there's a way we can, share out resources to achieve that, I'll be the first person to support that process.
That's a good thing coming from a legislator. Doc, because of the interest of time, the president also had some developmental tours in the Nyanza region. And even the media, we were caught flat-footed in the fact that some media houses or the media stations, even social media, talking about the bedrock of the bedroom of the Baba, And the president, according to the constitution, he is the symbol of national unity. There is no place that he isn't supposed to go, but of course the politics of the day did come out. But the good thing is that the leaders of this region, they came out in large numbers to welcome the president and also assist him in his development tour. I would like you to comment on that because you are also a politician.
Right, thank you very much. I think the president has played a very good politics. Being the head of the state, he has thought of two things. One, in the book of, what is it called, the politics, what is it called, this book? In one of the political books, it says, a politician, first and foremost, gathers the people who have not voted him. And that's why he said there, in my own backyard, you are given 28%. Their candidate, Raila Amolo, has been given 28%. In Deputy President Gachagwa's home yard, he has been given 25%. But the president only got 1%. That's what he said. Yes. And of course, that was a figure that was very clear. And going for the 1% is something strategically meant for, first and foremost, bringing Kenyans together, which is a great thing he has done. Secondly, he's building his political base very well in terms of how he will going to get 28% or even more in 2027 in Nyanza region. And definitely that is one on the political side. On the other side, being the head of the state, it is his mandate that he should look after everybody, regardless of whether they vote you in or not. And that happens to all politicians. Whoever has voted them in is not the people they give priority only, but the moment that you take the mantle of leadership, then your priority is the people of that constituency or that country that you represent. So the president there did a perfect thing in ensuring that he first reached out to people whom they thought that after he became the president, they were going to be neglected. So on that note, he has also launched a lot of goodies there. That is a very good gesture. I think President Ruto, his way of governance is so unique that you always find unexpected things, events, becoming the talk of the day. And why I'm saying that is that people expected everywhere, in every situation, areas where you have a stronghold are where you will first want to keep their base very well and then start moving forward. But he starts from areas which he never had a stronghold. That way, he has completely shown previous leaders that actually it's not about the voting process, or it's not about who has voted you in. It's about carrying the mantle of leadership and ensuring that each and every Kenyan feels the presidency in themselves as their own. And that way, by visiting Nyanza region, President has scored 100%.
And I would like to hear it from one of the leaders from the Azimio, Kenya Kwanza, from Azimio One Kenya coalition leader, that how the president trip was interpreted. Of course, the media also fueling the bedrock, the bedroom, the narrative. But the president is a symbol of national unity. That is enshrined in the constitution.
Indeed. What I want to say is that once you get elected to an office, you will look back and realize that you have those who voted you and those who didn't vote you. But what is expected of you is that you reconcile the two groups and you serve them equally. And that is what we will also expect of our president. And him doing that should not be something that should, surprise people. Why should a visit to Nyanza by the President of the Republic of Kenya be a topic of, discussion?
True, we should have seen the newspapers.
Why? Because he's a president of the entire republic.
Yes.
He has got a right to move around, to visit anybody, to serve the country. The same way at our level as members of parliament, we are expected to step in each and every corner of our constituency to serve people. So for the 5 years that you are elected, you are not a member of parliament or a president of those who elected you. You are a member of parliament and a president of those who elected and those who didn't elect you.
Well said. Doc, still on the president itinerary in Nyanza. Actually, this was on Sunday where he talked about, you do remember the fiasco that we had at the county assembly. We also had the Meru County Assembly saga. The president has steered clear of politics, but on that day he just said that and also said it's shame on you because when the president took over the reins of power, he has steered clear of politics and wants always talk about how you can make Kenyans' life better. But we see 2-3 county assemblies now starting even fighting. Something that EACC also looked at it and said we need to have a look at that because that is not the integrity that a leader should be having, what we saw in the county assembly. But the president also said, he didn't talk much about it, but he just like trying to whip them or a thin-veiled threat. I would like you to comment on that.
Right. I think the issue of county assembly in this country, I think the start of who should be a member of county assembly is a point of discussion. I don't know what Mheshimiwa will going to say, but for me, where we go wrong is that we want leaders who, in essence, should be the head of, a county legislative assembly, and yet the level of their education is in question. And you will find people who cannot express themselves. I have been listening to assemblies proceedings. These days it is digital, most of them, and you'll realize there are quite a number of few county assemblies who have people who are of substance and who can actually deal with what is right and what is wrong. When you have a group of leaders who have not come up very well in terms of what their task and roles are, then they will come up with issues that has happened in Meru, for example. But the fact that the governor has refused to agree to what you wanted, you try to say that we are the people who carry the day, not you, and then you start starting process of removing him out of the office. It's unfortunate. So I think one thing we need to do is we need to revisit the laws or the laws that governs the proceedings of county assemblies, as well as who should be a member of county assembly, because we have a lot of resources. We have a lot of resources going to the counties. And these resources, these budgets are supposed to be legally approved by the county assemblies and of course allocated to respective departments or needs of the people based on priorities. And if that is not what they can do, then it becomes an issue of just ticking. Either when you have an interest there, you tick. When you don't have an interest, you come against the executive, the county executive team, and you will not reach anywhere far. So I think when the president says you guys have to also reason wisely so that we run this government, they should learn from the national government executive how they operate, because from the lookout, the president has put one thing in place, that you want to do something, check out with all the laws governing that. And once everything is in order within the framework of the constitution, within the framework of the operating procedures in the government, you can bring it forth and we approve it and it goes and does whatever it's supposed to do. But when things just happens, I don't like to criticizing the previous government because our president was also in the previous government. But one important thing is that you will find several issues in the previous government that were, approved and later termed as unconstitutional. That brings you down as an executive. If you, who is supposed to be looking after the rules and the procedures and the laws governing everything that you bring out, and yet you have not done that, and then other people, external people, civil rights groups and other legal team tells you that, hey, what you have done is illegal, that is not in order. So I think the best practice is that people must understand understand things that needs things that requires procedures and within the framework of the law and the procedures that have been stipulated in the Constitution in order for them to do any step that will be meaningful to achieve result so that we serve better the community or the Kenyans that wait for us and each and every person to be served.
All right, and I would like to hear this from Mheshimiwa in terms of you are a county member of parliament and a county leader for that matter. And like how counties are working vis-a-vis what they should be working towards, and you're also very motivated when it comes to matters empowering the girl child and matters security. I've seen you on the forefront when it comes to the northern frontier. I would like you to comment on those two.
Yeah, sure. We have counties and we have national government. And I think we need to have a better understanding of what has been devolved for counties to undertake and what was left for national government to undertake. And we also have a situation where both should come together in an extraordinary moment like now when we are facing, a drought that is threatening everything that is living. So on matters education, first of all, we are reopening schools in the next 1 week. While I was coming here, I just came back from seeing PS education. And the concern that took me there is that we've made so much progress on 100% transition as a country. But I'm afraid next week you'll realize that very few students will report back to school, especially from the north. Reason being, the drought situation, the economic situation, the social economic aspect, everything, is at a point where we can say we're at our lowest moment, as a community that lives in those sites where it's largely affected by the drought. And we want to hear from the government on their plans with, school feeding program, because that will attract many students to resume school. And, ideally, the plan is always to give primary schools school feeding program. It is never budgeted for secondary school. So in this extraordinary moment, what do we do with secondary school? Because as a parent, I'm not able to pay the school fees for the school principal to feed my child. So what will happen? Because I can't take a cow or a cattle to a market and sell it. There's no value for it. So what are we going to do? Are we aware of that at county and at national level? Then what needs to be done? Should we let our students drop out of school? Should we let our girls get married off? Because that's the only option left after next week. So there are all these issues. Yeah, there's need to track water to schools now. Initially we were tracking water to animals in the grazing field. Now there's need to do the same for the schools. Yeah, there are emerging diseases that are coming up, affecting the herd, the few herds that has been left. What needs to be done? So when I call for action and I keep on saying the county and the national government needs to come together to save the situation, then you can begin to understand what I'm talking about. So as a member of parliament, it's the most difficult moment for us. We don't know how to address this on our own, and that is why I keep on saying we should have strong institutions that always exist to address issues that are phenomenal, that are bigger than people and bigger than our egos and our fights, individual fights. So that is where we are. We have NDMA that was specifically, set up as an authority to address emergencies like these. So my question is, are they doing enough? Are we resourcing them enough? Those are the things that we need to understand. Because sometimes we say, what is this institution doing? Because that is its mandate.
Yeah.
Yet we've not resourced that institution to the level where it can actually tackle, an emergency like this level that we are experiencing at the moment.
All right, and because of the interest of time, Doc, I'm going to give you a minute at least to wrap it up.
Thank you very much. I think mine is just to say that the people who vote in both county and national government are in need. As Mheshimiwa has said, county government and national government must prioritize and respond to ASAL regions. Drought is too much, people are dying and they are likely to die more. Animals have already perished. So mine is for us to take back the children back to school, as Mheshimiwa said. There's a lot that needs to be done. I thank my county governor, Mandera County, for an initiative he just launched yesterday with the members of parliament there, that he has waived all the school fees for secondary schools in the county for until the drought is over. That's a very good move, and he has prioritized things very well.
You're lucky as Mandera, you have enough resources to do that.
Yes. So
the allocation is so high. so Isiolo is getting the least.
I know that is also a challenge, but also being on the extreme and much of our resources going to security, because we are in two borders that are volatile, and much of our resources basically goes to security. But I think that move was necessary, that move was good, and it was a good gesture. I was not in his team, I was in a different team, but I think the move he has done that benefits each and every child in that county, particularly Mandera West, that I was born and bred, and of course that I want to carry the mantle and leadership of that place. I think that's a move in the right direction, and he has done a very good move. We expect other counties in the ASAL region
to follow suit. Yeah, and I would like Mheshimiwa to wrap it up, because she's mentioned something quite interesting in terms of the allocation.
It's good that counties are doing, commendable job in terms of response to the situation on the ground, but of course they are also overwhelmed.
Yes.
For the case of Mandera, they are lucky that their allocation is to a level where they can give out 350 million to secondary schools as a bursary. For my case, my county, the amount we get, I think after we are the second list out of the 47 counties. The other county, the county that comes after Isiolo is Lamu. So that means with the least resources, we are already struggling to fulfill the devolved function like water and all that. With drought situation, already it's too expensive to trek water, to provide food and all that. So you can't even move beyond that and start thinking of, giving bursaries on the same. And yet, as a county, we are receiving so many pastoralists into our county. Pastoralists from Marsabit are coming there. Those who are coming in are using our resources, not just water and pasture. We are giving them services like, medication. We are providing security. Every other service that you can actually cost for one citizen, Isiolo is carrying the burden from neighboring counties. So you can imagine why we need more allocation.
Yeah.
And I think it's a discussion that we need to have.
To explore?
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
All right. Thank you so much. That has been the MP Isiolo County. If you like the woman rep, that is Mumina Bonaya. And also we had Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan, also a leadership and governance expert, the two trying to put things into perspective, and especially when it comes to electoral matters. Remember the term of IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati and two other commissioners. And today we will be talking about matters of discussion that we're going to be having Senate, however, sitting in regards to that on Thursday. We're keeping a keen eye on that. But we've talked about a lot of matters, state of the nation, and education had to crop in. And that is a discussion that we are going to be having. I'll be having Dr. Mark Marunga, and also we'll be having another educationist who will help us put things into perspective, and especially when you talk about the junior secondary that we are expecting after next week. Thank you so much for watching, but don't go away. We're coming back with Matters Education.
are you doing well?
I keep messaging you, but I haven't heard back. I'm worried about you.
This is how we shall take care of this once and for all. Did you not notice what happened to the wheel? You're gonna deliver it like this?
Oh, jeez.
If you only worked as hard as you shopped.
These aren't for me. Why are you always like this, Mr. Bite?
What do you have in mind?
Kissima Drops, good morning. This company is where it is because of me.
I know you will never get tired of reminding us of the fact, but I'm not going to let you ruin this company because of your fights with Melissa.
Calvin is doing drugs.
I thought you were changing your ways. You have disappointed me once more.
I used to think that you'd do anything for this. But now you've become this person who ruins things that have taken people years to build.
Just hold on.
Roger. Istanbul kutoka kwa hii kampuni. Nani mwingine mwenye anaweza faidika financial?
Melissa.
Tunachunguza mauaji.
Unanishuku. This is my company. And no one is going to take it away from me.
I am taking over this company.
Itabidi mimi na tuzane. Tujaze ofisi sawa.
Forget about it!
Say to make it right, 'cause I need your arms around me every night. For me in a reggae party, me the in a the car. Me have a drink in a me left and a me right, and have a spliff of marijuana.
Naye Mtume Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam anashauri kuwa kuna zama ambazo itafikia ambazo binadamu atakuwa anaamka akiwa ni Muislamu, lakini jioni atazamia akiwa ni kafiri.
Harakisheni kwenda kufanya matendo mema lillah, na yale matendo mema awe na sharti mbili, iwe mukhlasa lillah, ufanye na ikhlasi lillah, kwa ajili ya Allah. Ukiswali swali lillah kwa ajili ya Allah.
Santos Chifira. Unafanya kazi gani?
Mimi nauzanga mawabling na wagon. Kwani wewe peke yako tu hapo kwa hiyo mtaa wewe ndio uko na mkokoteni? Lakini ni wagon yangu ndio imepatikana kwangu. Mimi nikiwapeaga wagon renangua, wanakuja magizgiz, wananipiga ngadua ama ruas.
Hiyo ni nini?
Wewe kuna mkokoteni yako ipotea?
Mimi hakuna mkokoteni.
Na uko na mikokoteni?
Hapana.
Uko na ambulance hiyo?
Sina.
Na ulikuwa unakuja kutufanyia first aid hapo kwa Kiraimusini kama nani?
Munangere ndio nini?
Ni pesa.
Nimesikia.
Huyo hana kitu.
Wewe unaweza mlipa huyu?
Nani?
Wewe.
Mimi sina kitu ya kumlipa na mlipa.
Sasa kwa nini unauliza swali ambayo haitakusaidia?
Wasana na hiyo yote. Hiyo barabara ni yako.
Barabara sio.
Welcome back. Just in case you just joined us, this is KBC News Check, and on this second hour we are looking at matters education, and especially after yesterday's announcement pitting the Form 4 selection that was announced by the CS Education, and a number of issues have emerged. Are we ready? The first time the pioneer class for the junior secondary will be starting from the 30th of this month. And remember, we still have Form 1 placement in the midst of harsh economic times and also in the midst of a drought. But that said, some of the members or some of the pupils who were able to secure their dream schools, it was quite a joy, and some disappointment and a protest from those whose desires of the heart were not met. Some parents have said that yes, indeed, we're going to take our kids to those schools. Others have cited a number of challenges which we'll be looking at with my panel of education expert. And the CS said that all the 1.2 million, over the 1.2 million pupils who sat for their KCPE will be placed somewhere in a school. But somewhere is not quite enough for some parents. They have cited a number of challenges which we again are going to be looking at. Junior secondary will benefit from the 9.6 cash injection, where the Pioneer Grade 7 begins again end of this month. Today, the results of Grade 6 assessment will also be announced. And let me now rope in my panel of experts. Beginning from my immediate left, we have Dr. Mark Matunga, who is an education expert and also a technology evangelist. And technology evangelist. We're telling us about that. Just next to him, we have Luka Nyambane. Luka Nyambane is also an education expert and also the head of protocol at the Mary Shaw School. Gentlemen, karibuni.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can begin. Happy New Year, Doc. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Before we even begin with what happened yesterday, maybe you can have 2 minutes of what the CS said in regards to how the education ministry is prepared for both the junior secondary and the Form 1. Let's first of all run that clip, Mugo.
Of the fact, the economic times we are in, that if we impose so many unnecessary levies, then our policy, our constitutional requirement of ensuring that education is free and accessible.
A large number of candidates did not receive proper guidance and direction when choosing schools. This resulted in some schools attracting far many applicants against their capacity. National Treasury set aside 15,000 per annum as capitation to facilitate free running in all our public schools. In total, the government will spend Kenya shillings 9.6 billion for the runners in a junior secondary school this current year.
And that's just an extract of what the CS talked about yesterday, the KICD, during the Form 1 selection result announcement. And without even looking at everything that the CS said, I remember moments ago, and Doc, you were here, when the MP, Isiolo, talked about, yes, we're talking about students and pupils to go back to school, but there'll be a number of challenges that the government never mentioned in terms of the drought situation, because if we had about anything on food program for the northern frontier, she said that will attract a lot of pupils and students. In your assessment, are we ready for the junior secondary and the Form 1 selection 2023?
Thanks, Troy. That's a good question, and Happy New Year to our viewers. It's a great opportunity that we are actually alive this year. To answer your question in a very brief manner, the answer is yes. Why am I saying that? Number one, education sector is no longer on steroids. With the past leader of the education sector, and I said that many times. Unfortunately, not many of my comments were carried to to the media. But I did think that the approach that the ministry was taking then was the best approach. And many times on this particular seat and table, I expressed my concerns about how the ministry was going about deploying the CBC curriculum and sectionalizing the approach and the processes that actually they needed to take. With the education sector off steroids now, because then you could not even speak. You know, whatever one person said was law, and the whole sector was actually thrown into chaos. The children were confused, the parents were confused. But the reason I'm saying we are ready is that, number one, our pupils are still there. They are alive. They are healthy. Number two, the parents are still there. For the most part, they're alive and healthy. Number three, we have our teachers who've been on a long holiday now, ready and prepared to actually go. I think that you're bringing the question with regard to all the calamities that are facing everybody around the globe. The economic downturn, the war in Ukraine, the just ended COVID issues, the drought and the famine that we've been facing for the last 6 months. Those will continue to be there. And I can tell you that, yes, going back to school, we as a country, and I believe the government, from what I've been able to see, we are ready.
And Nyambane, looking at what the CES talked about yesterday with full confidence, it's all systems go. Of course, there are a number of challenges because with every pioneer thing, you have to run into some challenges. Being an educationist, do you think we are ready and to just start rolling at the end of this month?
Ben, thank you very much for this chance. I wish to state that the government has already pronounced itself, given us a policy. And of course, the national government always comes up with the national education policy that guides all the stakeholders that we have in this country in the education sector. I believe that education sector is a key component of turning around the economy, turning around, you know, the socio-economic challenges that we have in this country. I would say that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. I believe, notwithstanding the fact that we have a variety of issues and, you know, challenges facing this country in terms of economic aspect, I believe that the CS was very clear yesterday on his address. And I do believe, of course, that we have a journey to move. As in the private sector, especially where I come from, the Merisho School, we are very, very ready, and we can be an alternative solution to another problem. And I believe that Merisho School is going to be actually the model school, especially for going forward in terms of CBC implementation, and also in terms of how we can be able to create enough capacity and facility for us to move this country forward.
It's a good thing that you've mentioned how you said that you are prepared. I'll be asking the question of how more have you prepared? Because now we have the pioneer class of the junior secondary, and you say you're prepared. You will be telling us about that. But back to you, Doc. Looking at parents, they have raised some pertinent questions, and which more you say very well is that indeed it's the economic turndown for any country, not only Kenya's. And they have even raised quite a concern when it comes to the matters of uniform for our junior secondary. And the CS talked about the board will agree on something. The board of the school will agree on how our grade 7 pupils will be, or students for that matter, will be dressed. This is a pertinent question in terms of uniform. Taken my kids to school, and you've also done the same, and you know, right now, for somebody who does not have a good source of income, that is an additional expense, something that maybe they should have been touched on.
I agree. That's a concern because it touches on our pockets, and this is January as well, and we always ask Kenyans, and that it's the world over, we fail to plan for January, and we always fail to plan for back to school. But nonetheless, I mean, I fully do understand the concern of most parents when we're talking about actually uniform. Personally, I think that, and I want to make this comment boldly, I made a similar comment some time back that we need to really reconsider boarding school issues. And I don't think I was taken seriously until the government started talking about it. I also want to actually make these bold statements that maybe it's time that we need to rethink about uniform. In the world over, school uniform is really not an issue. And I know that it's a structured way that we actually tend to think of discipline. But to me, I don't think that it's really one thing that we should be focusing on a lot more as a policy, that schools or pupils or students must be in school uniform. I know I've thrown a bombshell. We'll discuss that later in future. But with regard to the changes that actually touch on our pockets, Troy, you remember when we were on this table a few months back, we were dealing with the issue, and I kept saying that it was wrong for the minister then to actually create a scenario whereby we were talking of junior secondary school being created in a high school. That was a major transition issue. When you compare that issue to what we're dealing with now, I mean, the issue of uniform is pale. And so I want to first of all thank the government for actually reorganizing that. I mean, remember we spent nearly about 23 to 25 billion Kenya shillings when we were building the classes. I don't know, some of those classes will be rendered useless. Some of those classes will be used by those institutions in which they were built.
Why would you say some classes will be deemed useless?
No, I mean, but if you build a classroom for a junior secondary school in a secondary school, and then now we have decided
the government decided that it will be domiciled
in primary school. That's a building that is out there that is not that school had not planned to put up. They might not have immediate use for it. It'll just sit there. That is about 880,000 Kenya shillings that is sitting there. And that is what you face when you actually have wrong leadership. And I'm going to be bold. I mean, we like I said, education sector is now off steroids. We were running it with steroids, and that's what brought a lot of anxiety. But I'm bringing that background to just share with the parents that actually what we're dealing with now is a much easier, simpler problem than what we would have dealt with had the government, through the leadership of the minister now and President Ruto, not really change that decision. That hey, you know what? Let's have junior secondary school domiciled in the primary school. So back to the issue of uniform. I really don't see why it should be a different uniform. I really do not see why. If I'm moving from class 6 to 7, I'm already in my school, I already have unless some kids that have been overfed over Christmas and have grown a little bit size. But really, it should not be and cannot be really an issue that is brought back to parents now to actually have to deal with. And on that, I disagree with anybody, even if it's a ministry. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think that there should be a uniform discussion. That, parents need to actually go and get a different uniform. In fact, that can be a slowly transition. And by the way, that has very little to do with issues of curriculum delivery. At least that to me is what we need to be focusing on.
All right. The reason why I brought it up quite early is there was a concern by a parent who texted and asked, can you kindly ask this? Because this is something that we're being told in the next 2 weeks we are supposed to have done that.
Which is why I think, Troy, it's wrong for the ministry to even bring that up as something.
Continue with
just continue, and that's what I'm saying. The ministry should not. If they brought that as a policy conversation, that is poor thinking. Okay. They should let parents the kids just go back with what they have, and then transition slowly.
Nyambane, you talked about we are ready, and from the confidence in your eyes is that from your school you're quite ready. What are some of the infrastructural adjustments that you have had to make to ensure that you are ready? Because you said you're ready. Some schools are not yet ready, and even the assessment is not quite yet done, but you say your school is ready.
Thank you very much. I still want to say that we are in the 21st century. And the fact that we're in the 21st century, we ought to adopt an education system that actually will address the issues that we face today. And for me, that's the rationale behind the establishment of the new curriculum design that we have now. I will not sit here perhaps to poke holes here and there, because I know there are so many that I can do. But basically, the CBC curriculum ought to be, implemented in a status where we have even facilities to support it. For example, if you talk about identifying potential, you need to have, for example, a sportsman. You cannot be able to identify the sportsman without the facilities. Medical school, where I come from, we have the state-of-the-art facilities. And we have already recruited experts of international stature.
And maybe because, with all due respect, your school could be the schools that do not have any challenges when it comes to finances. But we are also looking at other schools as well.
Well, I am aware of that. But obviously, the economic constraints are global. And I wouldn't suggest that we don't have financial issues. But I'll say that for us to implement a curriculum that we have already chosen, in our school we already have state-of-the-art facilities like the sports that will assist us to nurture the talent. If you go to our classrooms, when you talk about ICT, CBC is all about integration of ICT in learning. You have that problem as major issue in this country, major in the public schools. But again, that one does not stop the government from implementing the CBC curriculum. Where I come from, in Marital School, we already have the ICT equipment in the classrooms. And that's why I started by saying that we are actually the model school to implement CBC as a world-class curriculum.
All right, let me hear from the technology evangelist himself. Looking at what he's saying is that we sit kosawa. We done. We have already put that, but it narrows down to availability of resources. And he has touched on matter sports and technology. But looking at what we have, the assessment being done, there are some schools, even the CS is talked about, the assessment is not quite done yet. There are some schools which have not yet been given the thumbs up. I would like you to touch on technology because the CBC
Ben,
is
if
touching...
you would allow me, please.
Yes.
Something before comes in. When we came here, one of the members of parliament, Honorable Mumina, just spoke to us and said the children in the northern part of Kenya are not ready to go to school. And the question is why? There is all about the basics. There is no food because of drought. I would just request the government or the Republic of Kenya, instead of us building, mega road projects, we look at the young people in that area and have an affirmative action, redirect our finances to ensuring there is free food programs. An hungry man or an angry man is an angry man. That is why even where I come from, we provide food first to the learner, make the learner comfortable, let them eat. This is the basics of this is the basics of the government. Any government in the world must ensure that they provide the basic human rights. If you don't provide the children with food, I don't think we are going to the right direction. You'll be giving policies to people who cannot actually benefit from the same. Medical school, food is very key for us. The boy will eat, not just eat, but eat very well.
Yeah,
then
again,
can be able to exercise.
To availability of resources. And your school is more or less an international school, right?
No,
it's not an international school. But if we go to the fees, I'm quite sure a number of parents will be surprised by the figures that you will mention. We are also factoring in those in public schools, and as you rightly put it, schools also in the northern frontier. Maybe, Doc, you can chip in with that.
Well, I mean, so let me just make a brief comment, and then I come to technology on the issue of school feeding. I think that is important. The issue of you remember government in the last 3 to 6 months has been distributing food. That shows you that the issue of famine is real, and they're not just distributing food in schools, but also distributing food to families, vulnerable families, which therefore means that maybe we also need to, from a policy point of view, we also need to explore the possibility of providing lunch. Or a hot lunch, or just maybe one meal in all the schools in Kenya, because that's a problem. In fact, that is why I was thinking that maybe we need to move away from uniform and focus on this. I mean, you and I went to school with very minimal clothing. If you can remember, and when we still learned. I mean, I remember my early learning. I was sitting on a stone under a tree, and actually that tree is still there. I always, whenever I go back to my primary school, I still point to it. That from my class 1 to 3, I was under this tree and sitting on a stone writing from my lap. But at least, even with that kind of harsh condition, if you didn't eat, you can imagine. So I think that it is important that the government actually addresses the issue of food and famine, especially in schools. I know that a human being can survive on one meal a day. It's possible. Of course, I'm also trying that, but that is by choice. As you can see from last time, I've lost a bit of weight. So that is. But I want to come to technology now. Yes. And Troy, I think part of the reason you invite me here is because you know that I say what I say.
I remember you talking about the boarding schools. We are going to be touching on that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how did we even end up with that discussion now? I mean, maybe I'm a prophet of doom. Or maybe I'm just a prophet, not a prophet of doom.
They have adopted a lot of policies, some of which we have already mentioned here.
Yes. So if you look at the issue of technology, I want to say that it is unfortunate that the laptop program failed. The laptop program failed on 2 reasons. One, there was a decision by government, and I participated, and I told government then, the leaders then, the decision makers then, that the device that they were picking was a wrong device. Form factor, they picked a laptop, a tablet, while they sold to the country a laptop. And the laptop was the best device that actually should have been procured. We procured 1.2 million tablets that are basically, of course, such devices don't rot, but become obsolete. And we'll basically throw them away if we don't figure out a way of actually refurbishing them. That was the first mistake that actually we did. And then number 2 mistake was that we did not prepare our teachers well. Teacher capacity building or teacher training or teacher readiness was not done well. It was done haphazardly, and that is partly why that failed. However, I still think, as Nyamande says, that schools that deploy technology will definitely succeed. And I think that with CBC, the use of technology will be inevitable. So government needs to start planning, and we have to figure out how actually to deploy technology in school. Let me say something that might confuse everyone a little bit for now, but I think that CBC as a curriculum and a competency-based education can be deployed effectively using what we call artificial intelligence, and that's basically the next frontier where we actually have to invest in, because CBC curriculum delivery requires that actually you help a learner to chart out a pathway. And with that, you actually use data from before, continuous assessment, to project which pathway the learner might go. You heard Nyambane saying that, we're looking at sports as well. Sports is not just basically seeing a child playing soccer or playing any other thing or just basically swimming. It's important that you capture data from early childhood to maybe grade 6 or grade 7 of this child, enter it into a system using artificial intelligence as a technology platform or tool that can be used to help define a learner pathway. That way, then you begin focusing on the learner's competence, because then we know Troy is good in broadcasting or communications. So we need to actually channel this child along those lines. So the use of technology is going to be inevitable. We will actually have to use it. I also want to share in less than 1 minute my personal experience. Actually, this is my second child who is fully on an online school. Today, my child is using a laptop and a tablet to learn from the house. My other child has used I'm talking about, I'm not preaching
university diplomas or
no, okay. Let me give you a perfect example. My daughter, who is now third year, she's in France on an exchange program, but actually a student at USIU, was in Alliance up to Form 3, dropped out. I enrolled her on an online in an online school, and she's now third year, doing very well.
Everything online.
Everything online. Everything online. I'm talking about my own daughter.
But unfortunately,
her name is Fura. Let me just finish the other point. My son, who is 10 years, began school about 2 weeks ago, fully online. 10 years, grade 6. So I'm not talking about things that are impossible. I'm sitting here in Kenya. Of course, somebody can say that, yes, I'm privileged, but I come from Fangano Island in Lake Victoria. Which is fairly
and of course, I'll be asking, a lot of people will ask, why did you decide for such a young child? And we don't have that system is not quite robust. Some people indeed, as you've said, privileged, do that here in Kenya, but there's the aspect of the kid being in school with other students. And why did you just choose that my kid will be doing everything online?
That kid will not be in school kama hajakula to begin with. So yes, as much as we want the kids to go to school, that kid will not be in school kama hajakula. But of course, once or twice a week, they go for chapel in school and they're able to interact. And then he goes to church over the weekend. So he has opportunities to really interact. But this idea of saying, so that deals with the issue of boarding school. But most importantly, I'm just saying that technology is possible as a tool to promote and facilitate teaching and learning. That is possible. Today, I am a testimony. I can testify about my daughter, 20-year-old daughter, and I can testify about my 10-year-old son.
You wanted to add something on that, because that is quite something.
But don't let that be the topic.
No.
Okay.
That will be quite something, because each and every school, according to the government, has to have some level of technology, because CBC has some level of technology.
Yes.
That is why they have decided to ensure that the schools have electricity. They are housed, not the trees and stones that we have seen previously. You wanted to add something on that?
I just wanted to add something on what Dr. Arias said. That one of the core competencies of CBC is digital literacy. Sometimes I find it too ironical that a 21st century boy or girl should be able to use the digital gadgets. But one of the major challenges we have in our country today, yes, we are going to implement the CBC curriculum, but how many teachers of the ICT skills? How many, we will keep on talking about, the government doesn't have money, the government doesn't do what, but it's all about priorities. Education is the major component of transformation. And this starts with even an individual, because you go like in the US, you find that the governments there will empower an individual citizen. And the best way to empower them is to give them the best quality education. Therefore, we will discuss about the resources come rain, come sunshine. But I just want to make it like all of us Kenyans take responsibility and try to complement what the government is unable to do. And the government being unable to do is not the people in government. It's us, the people of the Republic of Kenya, who are unable to give out taxes that are required for proper capitation in the education sector. However, I just want to encourage the government to just put more, support the private sector. Where I come from, the private sector, to put more classes. We have so many classes. For example, our policy in my school, Merisho Boys, is that we have 30 students per class. What is the policy of the government in the public sector? You'd find a class with 80 boys, or including girls in a class. How will you measure the competencies? How many teachers does the government hire? We are seeing the Teacher Service Commission is hiring 30,000. Are they enough to meet the inflow or the influx of learners in our education sector? Did we make a mistake of accepting CBC? The answer is no. Because in the 21st century, we must also empower the teacher to meet the demands of the 21st century learner. You cannot give me a learner of the 21st century and then you don't give me the facilities necessary to support what this specific curriculum design is all about. By the way, that is why the private sector, particularly I speak about Merisho, we give an alternative, we complement what the government does. And I will invite all the parents watching me now to visit Merisho and see what is all about CBC.
All right.
Yes.
Now, from what he's talked about is a pertinent question that has been raised by some of the private institutions, because they talk about we are also hard-pressed financially, and the government is telling us there are some, of course, we have to add laboratories, and of course, we have to stock them. And he's talking about more or less a partnership between the private and the public, between the government and the private sector, so that they may also be able to share in or help them to put up, because the infrastructure, you have been in education for years, you know infrastructure, the school infrastructure, when you talk about technology, is quite robust, and we want or will need a lot of money. But now, looking at even the money that the government is giving for capitation, for learners, for the food feeding program, is not quite sufficient. Now, if we reel in the private sector as well, that will be an extra burden on the government's shoulders. What do you think?
The private sector really is the engine of growth, be it in business, be it in education. And so you realize that even the teachers who are teaching in public schools, and Troy, I know, hata wewe, labda watoto wako wanaenda private school.
That's a discussion for another day.
Yes. Okay. And so you realize that private sector really is the measure of quality, measure of standards in many ways, because government does what we call mass services in terms of numbers. But Troy, you've asked me a question where I tend to have a slightly different view. That are we beginning to move away from brick and mortar? We've not even begun to have that discussion. That it should not be really about brick and mortar. And I'm really shocked that we're even having these discussions 2 years after COVID, or maybe a year after COVID. It basically shows you that there's very little that we did learn from the pandemic. Very, 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 very little. I am telling you that my daughter finished her high school during the pandemic. The whole year. That's why she's now 1 year ahead of her peers, because of use of technology. So in this partnership that Nyambane is talking about, I would be within order to to actually say that the partnership should be more on the technology side, not really brick and mortar. Because you realize brick and mortar, we closed those schools for how long? For 19 months. They were closed. They were useless. Actually, some schools were closed for good. Some schools, some facilities were auctioned because the proprietors could not pay the loans.
And why I brought in the private schools is because they feel a huge gap that the government does not fill. So they kind of act like a reliever for government and also for choice. If a parent wants to take his or her own child
Do you know
to a
what's
private
happening in
institution
Uganda?
or a public institution.
Do you know what's happening in Uganda?
In regards to what?
In regards to private schools versus public?
No.
In Uganda, we have 70% of learning happening, actually 77% of learning happening in private schools. Up to a point whereby the Ministry of Education has a directorate designed and set aside for private schools. And only about 25% are actually in public schools. That is just in the neighborhood here, which means that if Uganda is designing education policy, private schools are number one, because that's where the majority of the population actually goes. So we don't even have to go far. Ni hapa tu, anzia hapa Busia, Malaba. That is really what is happening. There are more private schools and most students, pupils in private schools than in public schools.
All right.
So what do you think the ministry is doing? Focusing on that.
On that. And the teachers themselves, because Uganda, I'm quite sure that now the private sector is very robust.
Exactly.
And because I've never gone to a private institution that has shortage of teachers, a shortage of resources. I would like us to touch on teachers themselves. We've heard that 30,000 will be employed in the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
And 30,000, they have argued that is a drop in the ocean, but it's a good step that the government is doing. 30,000 will able to alleviate some of the shortage that we have ever had. We've never had full teachers. Even when we were in school, there were still some gaps in teachers. But now we have teachers who will be teaching the pioneer class, junior, secondary. We do not have a syllabus for that. We do not have an institution, maybe like we have institution for primary school teachers or secondary school teachers, but we will have to do it. I'd like you to touch on that in terms of teachers.
Thank you very much. I just want first and foremost to commend the government for the step being taken. I know we are a deficit of over 120,000 teachers. But as I said, a step taken towards the positive, we always recommend that to be the case. But the issue will always come, yes, you have employed newly teachers, but they have capacity. You know, we already have even the existing teachers. What is the capacity? I think we need to do auditing. I know the trainings took place sometime last year, or especially on the CBC. But again, what was the outcome, or what is the impact of the trainings that took place, particularly for the CBC? My humble opinion is that we need to have regular in-service trainings. And that one means that if you assemble teachers in a sub-county, for example, and teach them the CBC curriculum within 1 week. So the point is, do they even understand how to understand the documentations, so many records that are required to implement CBC? Then I just want to say that we have a good curriculum, and I know the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, they are doing their best to give us the design soon. I just want to remind Kenyans that this CBC curriculum is not just Kenyan curriculum. The rationale is informed by so many, both state and non-state actors. The point is that this is a global curriculum that requires global approach in terms of implementation. And the fact is that the way we are doing it right now may not be necessarily, I think, is a knee-jerk reaction. Previous governments, present governments, one government. You know, employment of teachers, good. The question is, do we have capacity, skills? Us in the private sector, especially medical school, we have specifically trained teachers, 30 teachers.
In-house?
In-house. We do it in-house with all stakeholders involved. We have a team of teachers ready to implement CBC in a global way. And that talks about our vision, trying to mentor a boy or to make the boy become purpose-driven, a global leader. So we need to just let our government continue employing teachers, yes, but the most important thing, also give them capacity in terms of retraining them on how to implement the CBC curriculum. The other confusion is, we have CBC, we have 844 system. These teachers who are employing, we're going to give them the CBC classes. Where have they been teaching that CBC? Do they have a previous experience on the same? Are we going, what is it happening? Who has the responsibility of trying to ensure that this is not a trial error? Who is going to actually make Kenyans believe that the public sector education is actually implementing the core tenets and the objectives of CBC? The government has set aside, the president set aside the task force. I highly congratulate him. But now, what are they doing? Do they have objectives and goals? I just want to see this partnership between the private and the government sector should just come handy, especially during this time, particularly the facilities that are actually existing in the private sector. If you visit, and I just want to urge you, just take a bus, go to Isinya, Merisho School, visit that school.
All right.
See the kind of facilities we have.
What Doc has to say in regards to the capacity of the teachers that we are employing. It's a good thing that we will test the waters for the junior secondary this year, a year that is not clogged like last year, but one where we had to clog everything into 1 year. We now have the 3 terms that we've usually had, and we are expecting that, of course, there are some challenges with everything new. I would like you to touch on the capacity of the teachers that we have in regards to the CBC. We have a hybrid system. The good thing, Nyambane has pointed out that how do we increase capacity from what we had from our 844 system teachers to the new CBC?
Troy, I have to commend the government for, even the previous government, especially for handling on how they handled transition after having lost nearly a year and a half. How they handled transition to actually bring COVID issues and bring that to actually its normalcy. Now, when we start the normal calendar year going forward in the education sector. In education, hire the teachers, train the teachers, feed the kids, ensure that they're healthy, and watch magic happen. That is the truth. When you hire the teachers, capacity build them regularly, and of course pay them well. Pay them well. Let me repeat that: pay them well, and watch the magic happen. I think that again I must commend government, TAC under the leadership of Nancy Macharia, ministry under the leadership of Honorable Mashogu, and the president taking the lead on this. Getting 30,000 teachers to be employed, that's a good start, a good progress, a good step in the right direction, and that's something that we commend them. Now, what they need to do, even the 330,000 teachers that are already in service right now, need to be trained, need to be retooled in order to actually support the students. I think KICD has done a good job in preparing the curriculum, but the teachers need to be continuously retooled, and that is one thing that the government is doing. You remember that at some point there were court issues around this teacher professional development thing. It's something that I really support, that should be happening all the time. I told you that DLP, Digital Learning Program, the laptops project failed because teachers were not adequately prepared. Start with the teachers, prepare them well. Kids will always learn.
All right. And because of the interest of time, I see our time is up, but I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap it up.
Thank you, Ben. I know I didn't speak much, but I just want to say one thing. On 21st, this weekend on Saturday, I would like to invite all the stakeholders.
I wanted something that
to Merisho, just for an open day, to see.
I think they're gonna come.
Yeah, to see what is all about CBC. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Doc, and thank you so much, Nyambane, for your insight.
Thank you very much.
They are both education experts, and we also have a technology evangelist who says that indeed technology is the way to go, but we also have to push the right buttons. Indeed, that's where we wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching KBC News Check. I'm giving the baton to my colleague Khalid Abdullahi on the other side of the studio. We have Kruzi, Mashinani, and Tamrini. Remember, we continue this conversation on social media, and our sign language interpreter is Susan Thuku. Thank you so much for watching.